Say goodbye to your credit card rewards. Greedy corporate mega stores, led by Walmart and Target, are pushing for a law in Congress to take away your hard-earned cash back and travel points to line their pockets. The Durbin-Marshall credit card bill would enact harmful credit card routing mandates that would end credit card rewards as we know it. If you love your credit card rewards, tell your lawmakers, hands off my rewards. Tell them to oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to with Chris Things.
Ray! Do the hammerlock! I do the hammerlock! Ray! Do the hammerlock, you turkey necks! Yeah, do the hammerlock! I do the hammerlock! Everybody's doing it!
Yeah, pals, we're back. We're back at another episode of Wrestling Art with Chris Things. You've stumbled on to our Match of the Week edition. I am Chris Things Brian, wrestling art dude and podcast dude. This is our episode where we talk about what was my favourite match that I happened to watch that week. That I made an art illustration of, sometimes old, sometimes new. You never know what it's quite going to be, but it's a bloody doozy in an incredible match between Eddie Guerrero under his Black Tiger days against Dean Malenko in New Japan. Tremendous bout that took place during the 1995 Best of the Super Juniors tournament for New Japan Pro Wrestling at the Iwamezawa Sports Center in Hokkaido, Japan. Easy for me to say, but a bloody delightful match that I'm very stoked to have my dear friend Josh Vickers on the show to be talking about. So we'll have that coming up in a brief moment, but in the meantime I've got my little what's going on in the world of Chris Things intro monologue, and we've got some things going on. I mentioned last week I had an amazing time in Sydney for Lucha Fantastica, and I'm stoked to let you guys know that I in the next couple of weeks, I believe, I will be doing the Melbourne show of Lucha Fantastica. I'll be flying down. For those of you who might not know much about Australian geography, our main cities are separated quite a bit, so I'm flying down to Melbourne, Australia, for the big Lucha Fantastica show, my second ever interstate gig, doing this wrestling art tabling thing. So it's an exciting time, and I'm going to stay down there for a week. I'm going to hopefully get up to some fun research and art exploring while down there. And then the following week, I'm doing the Geelong Lucha Fantastica show. So exciting things coming up there. If you are in the Melbourne or Geelong region, please come along. I would love to see you there. And the Lucha Fantastica shows are so much fun, just the most batshit crazy Australian Mexican wrestling goodness that you ever did see. And I've got my art there. Come over, check it out, have a flip through my prints and my wares, and let's have a little chat about some wrestling. I've also got coming up. No, not coming up. What I just had. I had a tremendous thing doing the Makers Market at a bouldering facility this past week in the local Brisbane area. This was another new thing for me. First time I've ever done a Makers Market at a bouldering facility. But this was it was a delightful experience. It was a not the biggest Makers Market, so that was actually quite nice in and of itself, because the people that did come, I got to spend some nice amount of time, have some really nice chats. Sold some things, but it's more about, I think, the chats and the talking about the art and that side of it. That's really nice. And honestly, a big part of that as well was in a weird thing that happened. I somehow at this makers market, so a lot of the other people there, it was kind of their first one that they'd been doing. So somehow, like, I haven't been doing this very long, but I somehow became like kind of this like voice of dude that's been doing this art tabling thing for a while, some voice of experience. So I found myself able to sort of like impart some advice on some people who are maybe a bit younger in their sort of art journey. And it's a weird thing, because on one hand I'm like, who the heck am I, to be giving people advice? But at the same time, like, honestly, there's a lot of things that if I could have talked to myself as a younger art dude and told myself certain things, I think that would have been really good for me to hear. So I don't know, it's just a nice deal being able to talk to other artists, and if there is advice that I give that is somehow helpful, then that is delightful. But yeah, so that was a great experience, and again, looking to do more and more of these in-person art tabling things. Another exciting thing that I am stoked to let you guys know. This is an official announcement. Okay, this is the first you will hear this if you're listening to the podcast right away. I am doing a competition. This is my first ever competition. It's associated with this this podcast, associated with my art practice. We're doing a bit of a match of the week giveaway. It's a you do your own version of the match of the week, right? So I'm not, whatever you do, I'll be stoked to see it. Okay, so if you have a Instagram account, or even on Twitter, if you do up a little doodle of either of this coming match of the week that I'll be posting tomorrow, if you do that, you tag me. I'll have the official details of it on my page, so let's not get too bogged down. But basically, you do your own version of the match of the week, and tag me in it. Let me know. I will then choose what ends up being my favourite ones of those submissions, and you will then get a complimentary copy sent out to you of a fancy premium art print of this match of the week that I'm doing this week, or if there's any other ones that happen to be your favourite, just let me know and I can make it that. But yeah, please, I'm very excited. I look forward to seeing what people come up with. Honestly, a big part of this show has become, that I'm really stoked about, is if I can, encourage people to be a little bit creative, to do some doodling, to do some drawing. That's so fulfilling for me and so nice, So this is an effort to get you guys to be like, all right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to give it a go. And please don't in any way, get too in your head about it and think that it needs to be like perfect or, a really fancy thing that you've spent a long time on. I love rough and ready stuff too. If you do a little stick figure sketch of the match of the week, I'll be stoked to see that as well. So whatever it is, I think the key here is I'm just looking forward to seeing the variety of all sorts of different stuff that people do. So we'll see how that goes. There's a chance here that I don't get a single person submit one of these. But hey, that's maybe a good thing if you're wanting to get one of these free prints sent out to you. Yours might be the only entry, so you might be sitting quite pretty there. But no, well, I'm intrigued to see how this goes. I yeah, I'm really looking forward to see what people post and share, and I'll make sure when you tag me in it and do that, I'll make sure to share all of these on my Instagram stories as well. And yeah, hopefully people dig it and are interested by the whole thing. But this is my first foray into first ever competition of the match, your version of the match of the week. Exciting stuff. All right, guys. Well, I think that's about enough of my gaggling on. I am stoked to throw over to our latest match of the week. Take it away, guys. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I am very excited to introduce the gentleman on the other line to talk about a bloody delightful match. So this guy, you could say he is my brother from another mother. Also my former tag team partner back in our wrestling days, the famed Haze brothers of Brisbane Wrestling. Welcome to the show, Josh Haze, otherwise known as Josh Vickers.
Mr. Things, thanks for having me. I'm so excited for this.
Dude, I'm stoked to have you on the show. I remember you were one of the first people that I hit up about the idea when I first got this thing going.
That's right. I remember that. A nice, enjoying a nice imported beer at the Scratch Hotel, or the Scratch Bar. Yeah, it was a good conversation that day, and I think you made the right decision doing the podcasts, and it's been going good. So, congrats to you.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate it. We do like our fancy beers. But yeah, for the show, I mean, this is a funny one because like you used to watch a fuck ton of wrestling, right? But then, not so much over the last little while. You kind of like transplanted your passion for wrestling into basketball for the most part, right?
Yeah, that is right. I think probably been a solid at least 9 or 10 years, maybe since. I think it came up the other day in my Facebook memories. The last match I had with Dave and Rick at some show in some pub in the back of Beanley somewhere, where we had I hadn't wrestled for like 2 years, and then we had an idea of joining Kelso and David's little prison outfit, and I bought a stupid orange jumpsuit off Amazon or something, and we went about, and I had to have a match with what was it, the known 7-Eleven holder-upper David Hockley.
Yes, the guy who actually attempted to rob a service station.
Yeah, for a soft drink and a packet of cigarettes. I remember the story being.
And then another one of the guys in the match was a dude with a pacemaker.
That's right. I remember being backstage, and David said, "I'll pull you into this corner and I'll chop you." And he goes, "Oh, if you could not chop me, I've got a pacemaker." I said to him, "Mate, should you be here? I don't think this is the sport for you." And then I think it was it Kelso or Rick? It was one of them. Gave him a big old chop in the middle of the match, but on the other side, I believe. But
I'm
very
pretty
funny.
sure it was. I at least have the memory of David giving.
Oh, it could have been actually
his pacemaker that he was told about.
Knowing our friend David and his lack of care for authority and safety. He's unless it comes to his work, he's a very dedicated plumber. Mm-hmm. What a blast from the past.
Man, if this doesn't give All my listeners out there, if this gives you a bloody glimpse to the wonderful world of Brisbane wrestling back in the day, that's just a taster. My gosh.
Or at least a very good glimpse into maybe why some people choose to retire.
Yeah, we've both had the boots hung up for a good, pretty well decade now.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was the right choice for me.
Yeah, me too. I think it's funny because our friend Davis, who some people might know, I assume anyone who's listening to this wrestling podcast would know who he is.
Dougzilla Davis of Aussie Open,
good friend of ours. And during COVID, he came back for a little holiday while he was rehabbing an injury, and the whole country got locked down, and he ended up having to stay here for like a year. But after he'd recovered from his injury, he had come down to do a few shows down in Sydney, and he got me on the door for a couple, and I went and saw a couple, and I was telling you the other day that I was really lucky to have gotten to see the match against the Velocities at Liberty Hall that Meltzer gave a 4.75. I remember I had bruises on my hand because we were sitting up on the balcony, so we were standing up and it just banging the wood on the other side of the rails just as hard as I could, just chanting Aussie Open. And there just being so many people there, and how electric it was, and yeah, it was a real vibe. And I didn't actually get to run into Davis after that show, but ended up going to the Bat and Ball hotel around the corner and drinking a lot of beers.
Nice.
Because I just had so much. I had so much. What's it called? I was just so pepped up after it that I just had to stay out for a couple of hours because what's it called? Adrenaline. That was it. That's the word.
Yeah.
And just watching an instant classic like that. But yeah, definitely best match I've ever seen. And ironic that it came 7 years after I stopped watching wrestling.
It's so funny, like, to think back. So, we were pretty involved in the Brisbane wrestling scene, and doing some stuff in Sydney and that for a decent little while there. I think we gave it a pretty red hot go, and then it's just so interesting to see how things go on. Most people kind of like come to their senses and are like, this wrestling thing is probably not a great idea for my long-term health or whatever. And then there's some people that have stuck with it. And then, like you mentioned, like Davis, it's just like surreal, with all the amazing things that he did in Rev Pro, and then New Japan, and then now AEW. But also like Jonah Rock, Bronson Reed, I think is his name at the moment, and yeah, it's just kind of crazy. The people that kind of stuck it out, it's like they're now kind of Robbie Eagles, another one.
Of course,
incredible stuff now.
Yeah, Shane Haste.
Yeah, it's like the people that. Yes. Oh, and Mikey, man, I love TMDK.
And we actually got to wrestle a lot of them.
Yeah,
it was
that's the weirdest
very
part.
cool.
So you see these guys on TV, and you're like, we wrestled back in the day.
Yeah, it is a bit surreal to see sometimes, and definitely when it comes up, I always make the effort to watch it. And I think I definitely got a hold of some streaming to watch the New Japan Super Tag League tournament that Davis and Kyle were in as well, and like just the fun matches they got to have there.
Oh, so good.
It's funny how that worked out when they were trying to get into New Japan, and then they went to America for a little bit to do, I think, was it the New Japan shows over there or the Ring of Honor or something, and then all of a sudden started doing some AEW stuff because they were starting to blow up. So it's cool. It's such a good story to see, and you see how much people like him especially put into it. And it's way more than I ever did. I think, especially even from a
same
getting the look, investing in yourself type way. Like, and Davis is also different from everyone. I'm sure he probably wouldn't mind me telling this, but he started watching wrestling a lot later than all of us. A lot of people who get into it are just into it since they were kids and things like that. And he kind of ended up getting into it at like 16 or 17. And then, like, you watch like WrestleMania 17 with a friend or something, or WrestleMania 20 or something, and then just decided, oh great, this is awesome. Just started getting into it and was like instantly good. Like, and instantly just looked past all of the pop stuff and shit that was on TV to like find the most erratic, esoteric style of matches to learn about and watch, and got crazy into all that stuff. And then I think I met him, I would have
Well,
been
he was
19.
one of the first people that I remember, like, talking to, like, at wrestling training, who was, like, into, like, PWG and stuff. So
Exactly,
that
yeah.
was sort of like, oh, okay, he's like, full
like
into
a
it.
guy.
But, yeah, man,
Yeah.
such, like, a natural...
Oh, and he took to it straight away. And I think when I met him, he would have been like 17 or something. And
Yes, same.
just like so chill, and like obviously we were only like 19 and 20 or something as well, but yeah, just like really quiet. And then you'd get him in like a mood or something, and he'd just be like the biggest rascal. He was the best.
Yeah.
But I don't think we ended up, being too close with him for the first couple of years until we actually started properly hanging out. And then it was, golden. But anyway, down memory lane. Blast from the past. I think that's 15 years ago or something now. So
Yeah.
surreal.
That's wild the way time works, dude. It's like thinking it wasn't that long ago when we were, like you're saying, 19, 20 years old, and just been like, you know what, let's go to this wrestling school in Capella, Brisbane, at a industrial estate.
$100 to try out, and like, was it $50 a month or $80 a month or something like that? In cash, please.
It wasn't the carny cash grab that some of them were, but it felt steep at the time.
Yeah, I think to his credit, Mason had started with good intentions in PWAQ and had a very good setup out at Capella, which that was the first, I guess. I think it also like probably had a lot to do with me sticking around and trying it, because it actually looked like it was set up kind of like what you'd call like a CrossFit gym now, with like mats everywhere and some weights and a ring constantly set up. So you go in there and the garage would come open, and it was super legit. Like, it felt super legit. And so like learning from like, it was I guess Esteban Molina and Mason running training sessions, and you just go there. And I remember, the first time I did it, like, I'm in this actual warehouse, and there's a full proper ring set up, and there's a toilet there, and there's like, it's like a legit setup. Like, to think 5 years later that shit doesn't exist around, and we're friggin' setting up and packing down every Saturday in someone's backyard. And like, which I'm sure is probably not that uncommon for people who've done any type of wrestling.
Yeah, let's say
But,
so.
yeah,
So it's like I think there was something magical about it,
exactly.
like about walking into that shitty shed, but like the wrestling rings there. I remember being real taken back by, like, on the walls there were like these framed
Posters.
like pictures of like these posters of like Japanese wrestling, like certain guys, and and like a whole wall of like tapes that you could borrow to take home.
Yep.
So,
That was awesome.
Studying kind of element of it. So it did. There was some very cool stuff.
Yeah, and I wasn't like a super fan, I guess, in terms of like watching indies and Japanese stuff and old Mexican stuff and whatever, until I started doing the wrestling. And then I was like, oh, there's so much more than just SmackDown and Raw, and everyone was so legit. But to my point before, I think if I would have shown up and it would have been Cobra Jones's backyard when I was like 19, I probably wouldn't be wrestling. Like, I probably wouldn't have done it at all.
I probably would have been the same, man. I originally had intentions of training at Lance Storm's school.
I was going to talk about
intention. That intention kind of like slowly was like, oh well, I'll just do a little bit of pre-training at this local Brisbane school, and then go over, and then long story short, I clearly never went over, but yeah, for sure, if I had intentions of training with Lance Storm and then I went to the local one, it's like, Cobra Jones's backyard, I probably would not have stuck around.
I remember wanting to go to Lance Storm's school, and then I read, because he used to do blogs, I think, somewhere.
Yeah, I read.
And I read
those.
one of his blogs, and he's like, you shouldn't be eating like whatever you want. Like, food is just fuel, and you should only be consuming like chicken and vegetables or whatever. It wasn't that bad, but I was like, fuck this guy, he's a hack. I'm shoving a McDonald's Big Mac into my mouth.
Man, the funny thing is, like, that whole, like, for a long time, Lance was kind of seen as, like, the preeminent trainer. And, like, I love
absolutely.
Lance Storm as a wrestler and everything like that, but a lot of the kind of lessons, like, because I, spent a bit of time with different people who did, actually go over and train with him. And, a lot of the lessons of the way...
Which we know a lot of people that did.
Oh, man, so many people did. But, like, it just, to me, I think a lot of his philosophies didn't really match up with what I kind of wanted out of wrestling, but I mean, you don't even know.
He was very like formulaic.
Yeah,
like everything was like, I remember just people coming back and like people who trained with Lance, like, because was it Carlo?
Yeah, Carlo Cannon.
Carlo Cannon. So he trained over, and so it was always like all those guys who went over, and he was a great wrestler, by the way. But I think from like that thing, people would come back, and the things that they would teach you were just so like formulaic, right? Like it's all just like shine heat, come back, finish, and that's how a match goes and whatever. And you learn that, and that's how you start to wrestle, and that's how you become good, is sticking to those fundamentals and understanding telling a story and the psychology of a match and all that stuff. But then it's like a lot of people get trapped in that mindset, and they don't get creative with how they do their matches and stuff. And obviously, I think, to my point again before, what I was saying about Davis is that he never like lets that happen in like his matches. Like it's going here and then it's coming back here and then it's going to go over here and then it's coming back, and it's like it isn't sticking to that traditional formula of stuff, and that's what makes it exciting. Like they're the best matches to watch that aren't,
super creative.
Yeah.
And I assume a lot of that came from, like that awesome UK scene that he was part of, with like Progress and Rev Pro and everything, when they were all like, doing some of the coolest stuff in the wrestling world.
For sure.
But yeah, always a super creative guy. But yeah, to your point, I think there's definitely something where the real good ones are the guys who kind of like push outside of those, initial kind of like formulaic approach, or like a, WWE formula kind of approach to wrestling, and get into the weird shit.
Yeah. But then obviously, I guess, to our discussions the other week at old Lucha Fantastica, there is a certain charm in a basic match that a crowd can like get behind as well, like depending on your environment and your show. Like obviously for us being a bit snobbish and having been super fans and stuff, where you do expect a bit more out of something, or not to say like super fans or anything like that, but like you do kind of have standards for what you want and whatever. But also that formula wouldn't have worked at that show that we watched, and that's what made Lucha Fantastica special.
Yeah, I mean, the Super Lucha Fantastica that's a great example, because that's like, to me, again, I don't think that's necessarily like following, like a basic formula. Like what makes that kind of thing magic is more like, the comedy and the amount of that kind of like just really committing to all of the bits that you're doing, like outside of like, all right, this is just a opening spot, cut off, heat, shine, come back, whatever. It's like just committing to the comedy in like such a degree that they're doing. To me, that's like a fun example of like the weird shit,
like the entrances and the fluff before anyone even started wrestling was like 3/4 of it. Like it was just like walking around in circles for 10 minutes, pouring tequila in people's mouths and doing stuff like that. And it was just like everyone was so into it. And obviously it's a Saturday night, and you'd say, I reckon at a guess, you'd say 75% of the people that were there or more probably didn't even really watch wrestling that much. They just kind of heard about it through whatever. And obviously they do a great job of advertising.
Know what it was.
Exactly. And they're just turning up, or like one of the friends in the group kind of knows about wrestling and went, if you guys want to come along to a show, like this is the perfect one. to go to because it is just silly fun. Like the freaking just the first character to come out was just the priest, L bloody someone, and he had his little altar boy with him, and it was just like so, I guess, like not edgy, but like just funny, and like everyone's always arguing about the same shit all the time. It was good observational humor, and it was very like tongue in cheek, while also like being like fucking we see the shit in the news all the time and it's so dumb.
It was just the best level of like offensive but like
And then
hilarious.
having
So good.
the drag competition come out, Suplex, is just like one of the funniest wrestling names like ever.
Tremendous.
I really enjoyed it, and it was just every match was like that. Like it was just some silly character, and like all the freaking costumes are like the same at every show, and then just the fact that it's like a traveling show, so there's different people in the costumes each time. So some of them are like ill-fitting, but they're all like filling the brief of the character. Like it's just so perfect in that like nobody's there to be like with a notepad and pen just being like, oh, they didn't do this, or this match could have been like whatever. It's just like everyone just drinking cervezas and margaritas. It was
so
great.
Good. It reminded me a lot of like when we're talking about the comedy and the characters and that like just committing to the entrance and that whole thing becoming such a bit of it. It actually reminded me a lot of ECW in some ways, especially like getting to the rivalry that we're talking about here tonight. Like, I think the magic of ECW was like, I mean, you'd have obviously a lot of variety in your kinds of matches, and obviously a lot of sort of hardcore stuff, but a lot of like actual great, in-ring wrestling kind of stuff, like the, Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko amazing series. But like, no matter what, I think the magic of ECW is really just about like completely, creating those characters, doing original kind of stuff with those characters, but just, I mean, and this is obviously just a testament to like Paul Heyman and like the bastion of creativity that he is.
Absolutely.
But like, I still don't think that there's ever been an example in wrestling like with like just the level of connection that those characters had with that local like Philly, New York audience. Just amazing shit. But yeah,
couldn't have picked a better city to start something like that into. It's just like Philly, it's just absolutely feral when it comes to like sports and getting into something. Like I really love the sports culture. Like obviously from afar, I don't live there. I've never been in a Philly sports riot, but I dream of it. Like I think one day I'm going to get there, and I'm going to.
Oh man.
Go out in my Ben Simmons jersey and just get shot after death.
the crowd, the fans in Philly are just menaces, right?
I love them.
And that's an interesting thing, again, like looking at, so this Eddie versus Dean rivalry, most people think straight to their ECW matches, and they had some incredible matches in ECW between, the ones at ECW Arena, the ones in Florida, did a whole bunch of them sort of around the loop on the smaller ones that I remember collecting all of the fan cams of back in the day. But like they also had some fantastic matches in Japan that I'd never really even like I'd heard about, I think, but I'd never watched until we were talking about doing this, and I watched it the other week doing that Eddie rabbit hole that I went down, and man, I was blown away because it's like the magic of the ECW matches, but like such a different setting, and you couldn't get more of a polar opposite audience between like these rabid, like semi-inbred Philly fans to like respectful, like Japanese fans of I think this one takes place in Sapporo. But I think that polar opposite element of the crowd kind of really is like super interesting when you're talking about this rivalry.
Yeah, and I think great job on finding the match, by the way, too. That Eddie Guerrero compilation, 1992 to 1996. Eddie is spelt wrong, and it was posted in 2020.
No, I think is it EDDY?
Yeah.
Is that how,
or is that what it was?
Spelled? That's how he originally spelt it.
Oh, look at that. But I looked at that and it was like posted in 2020. It had 11 likes and it was by some like Mexican channel on Facebook. That is a great find. And it's just 8 hours of absolutely classic young Eddie matches.
Incredible
and man,
stuff.
I've had, it's been pretty, I haven't been too busy at work this week and I've got my 3 screens set up and I just had one screen just dedicated to just these Eddie matches, just running like 8 hours of like random compilations for between this 4-year wrestling period. And it's got everything too. Like it's got Japan, it's got WCW, it's got ECW.
Some AAA, Mexico.
There was too, yeah. And there must have been at least 4 or 5 matches with Dean Malenko. And it's funny you say like the rabid crowds in Philly to the contrast with the crowds in Sapporo was that they basically wrestled the same match. Like it was different, but like just it was the same style, and it's like the catcher's catch can, the very technical, the over like out to the outside, bring it back in, do some moves, put a chin lock in, get out, go to the outside again, jumping from the top rope to the outside, coming back in, swapping submissions, like the pin sequence, like everything was just so. I think I definitely want to say like tight in that like technically. Some of the best.
I would call that maybe that sort of in terms of the style of match. That's maybe like what they used to call back in the day like a stampede wrestling or like Calgary style of wrestling.
Okay.
Like your total sort of like Benoit, Owen Hart kind of like style.
Your Lance Storm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like Jericho and Benoit. All those guys came from that Calgary area, right?
Yeah, or at least they like spend a lot of time there. But yeah, then that sort of became like I think the key part of this kind of like
Say goodbye to your credit card rewards. Greedy corporate mega stores, led by Walmart and Target, are pushing for a law in Congress to take away your hard-earned cash back and travel points to line their pockets. The Durbin-Marshall credit card bill would enact harmful credit card routing mandates that would end credit card rewards as we know it. If you love your credit card rewards, tell your lawmakers, hands off my rewards. Tell them to oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill.
National melting pot kind of style that brought together, like elements of like lucha libre and like Japanese wrestling. And yeah, I think this style of match, like they were talking about, like through all of their series, was like you kind of forget a little bit with when you're watching it with today's eyes, like just how groundbreaking that was kind of at the time.
I wanted to talk to you about that because obviously like those matches where Eddie's obviously Black Tiger and Dean in those Japanese matches is that they are doing a lot of lucha moves and like proper good lucha.
Yeah.
Like not just a couple arm drags, not like a kip up, it's like posting up, getting on like over the top of the shoulder, flipping back off, turning it into an arm drag, using the ropes, going back through. And it's like, obviously, if you watch Japanese wrestling now or over the last 20 years, DDT and what was the other one? The real, was it Pro Wrestling Dragon?
Dragon Gate,
that was it.
Dragon
and
Gate,
yeah, like where those matches are basically lucha. And how that style just became so integrated. But I think, a testament to the Japanese fans just being like, hey, this is sick. Keep doing it because because obviously wrestling crowds are totally different over there, which I'm sure you've spoken about heaps.
Yeah, I mean it's super interesting, like the lucha libre thing, like in sort of the Japanese wrestling context. Like there's a massive sort of like history of it, going back to kind of like Mil Mascaras and like Dos Caras and stuff like that back in the day. But then, yeah, like what you're saying, Dragon Gate, I think, was like a huge part of like the modern evolution of it. And then going back before that, Toriumon and what Ultimo Dragon did in sort of like merging those worlds. But before that, like even Gran Hamada and the original sort of Lucha version of UWF in the early 90s, I think that was a super groundbreaking thing. I remember back in the day seeing some tapes of that, and that was when you'd have guys like Jerry Lynn and like Sean Waltman back when he was in his Lightning Kid days, like X-Pac.
Oh, hell yeah. I definitely saw a couple of little X-Pac mullets floating around on that compilation, and it was like
so good.
pre NWO X-Pac. Yeah, it was Sean Waltman, and he had a good ECW stint too, right? It's also hazy to me now.
Sean Waltman was ever in ECW. I know Scott Hall had a brief little foray there, but no. It's weird though, because I could totally see Waltman fitting in.
Absolutely. And maybe it was the WWE version.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe I'm just getting him. Maybe Spike Dudley had that scene, had that position already on lock, you know.
I mean, it's a I think that beautiful mullet that everyone kind of seemed to have in the early 90s was a great one.
There's so many of them.
So
that compilation.
And then they went out of fashion, and then now they're back again.
Oh, they're great. I'm growing my hair out currently, and I think it's going to end in a big mullet. Just saying.
Ooh, fuck yeah.
It's kitschy.
Please.
It's kitschy, but you know, I think it's timeless. And people are just going to have to learn that the Eddie mullet is the superior mullet.
It really is.
I think out of all of them, it's probably my favorite because it is like very like proper and gentlemanly at the front while just being a raging party at the back.
Oh, as it should be. So if you were going back to the Mulletville, you haven't been scared off by your previous foray into cutting in a Eddie mullet all those years ago?
I don't think it scared me as much as I just didn't want to get like. I think I only did it for like a couple of weeks, but it was just the fact everyone, like, this is a long time ago now, but everybody just wouldn't. Like, it's like when you do something like that, you're going, especially at that age, I guess, maybe you're going in and you are the center of focus. So, like, I guess and it probably was for me at the time, like a bit of an attention grab, but it was a lot. Like, people would come up because it is so prominent. Like, it's not like an Australian mullet where it's just like short on the back and sides and then you've just got like a little rat's tail or like a fuzz at the back or whatever. It's like very pronounced, and the hair at the back was like very long, and I'd had like a middle part up the top, and so like everybody wanted to talk to me about it. And so like after 2 or 3 weeks I was like, fucking over this. I'm just sick of talking about my fucking hair.
Did you actually take a photo? Did you take a photo of Eddie into the barber when you got it cut in?
It was actually a friend of mine who did it at the time. She'd come over to my house and I just showed her a photo of Eddie and was like, this is, because he'd also just like, I think it was like the 4-year anniversary weekend of his passing. And so we had a show, and then I just wanted to have a mullet for the show because I'd been growing my hair out for so long and it was just starting to drive me a bit nuts. And so I just kind of was like, oh, it's coming up on Eddie's anniversary. Like, I think I'm going to like cut this awesome mullet. So showed a photo to my friend and she nailed the brief. She just like cut it in. Perfect.
So good.
Yeah.
And you can't forget the dirty Eddie stash as well in terms of the completing the look.
Man, he is the best. I love him so much.
Yeah. I think Eddie is it's funny because originally back in the day in WCW, he came out with a T-shirt that became very like famous underground for a while. It was like quite bootlegged of like the Eddie Guerrero was my favorite wrestler thing. And I guess the joke was like, he was kind of like this, not anywhere near top of the card heel kind of thing. Just this like shit-eating heel, like middle of the card, I guess. So it's like the joke of it is like, oh, who would have Eddie Guerrero as their favorite wrestler kind of thing? But then, like, fast forward all these years, now so many people, not ironically at all, just because he was so fucking amazing, Eddie is their favorite wrestler.
I think he is mine. And, you know, obviously I've been a big WWE guy my whole life, but once I met, well, I was rather, but once I kind of met you and started getting into all these things, like we're going back and watching all the old AAA Eddie stuff and the New Japan stuff from time to time, and the ECW stuff, definitely, like watching when, what was it, maybe 2010 or 2011, parking up at that house in Ashgrove and watching Monday Night Nitros from like 1996, and we wanted to watch them like chronologically, so we'd just come over every Monday night and watch WCW Nitro, and they were like peak Eddie years because he's just on the undercard, just like opening the shows and having these like banger matches, like back when you were allowed to just have a solid 10-minute match to start a show and you didn't have to like do bullshit storylines for the upcoming pay-per-view. It was just like, here's two cruiserweights that are going to go at it. And it was sick. It was like perfect Monday night stuff to watch. He was so good.
Just have like a great 12-minute match.
And also like just he's so charismatic. Like every storyline, like he was just handed some shit. And like I was reading through his history on Wikipedia today just to like jog my memory a bit on like some of the late 90s, early 2000s stuff where he's kind of comes to WWF for a little bit and then he leaves and does a New Japan stint and he comes back. And it's just like, he like his first stint in the WWF, he was only there for like a year or just over a year. And he had like that whole storyline with China.
He was injured for most of it, right?
Yeah, he kept hurting himself. And then he came back with the Radicals with bloody, was it Ben Meyer and Malenko and they just like
and Saturn, yeah,
and then that's where he got injured, and then he friggin' had that accident because he'd had like two big car accidents, and one he'd developed like a addiction of, and so he was let go because he had to like go to rehab, and then he came back, and then like 2 years later he's like winning a fucking championship at WrestleMania, and like that promo, was it the promo he did right before WrestleMania? I don't know if it was it to Brock? No, not to Brock Lesnar. To freaking, I can't even remember. But
I always remember the big Cow Palace show that they had. It was like the pay-per-view before WrestleMania, I think, in like 2004 or whenever it was, where it's like Eddie and Brock Lesnar in the main event for the WWE Championship, and going into it, you're like, you know, this would be so great.
And he was the ultimate babyface speech.
Yeah. And then he like shocks the world and wins it.
That was the one. Because they wrestled at like, was it No Way Out or something?
Yeah.
I can't remember all the pay-per-view names now. It's so far long ago. But him just cutting like, he's like, I got heart, dude. And like just channeling like the most amazing. And it's like a full like just 3-minute perfect promo. And it's like the right before the pay-per-view. And then he wins, and like no one thought he was going to win. Oh god, it was beautiful.
So good. It's like funny, like with Eddie, there's so many different parts of his career, like that you can really go down. You know, like I was saying, like going down this rabbit hole, and just discovering new parts of greatness that he had. Because like even if he never went to WWE, to me he would have he has a Hall of Fame career. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
like
totally.
Between the stuff that he did in CMLL and then AAA, and that like potentially like one of the greatest tag team matches of all time in that When Worlds Collide pay-per-view with him and Art Barr as Los Gringos Locos against Io Del Santo and Octagon. The big hair versus masks match. Like, to me, that's like one of the greatest matches of all time. And that was what, like 94, 95? I think that was what actually got him in the door in ECW. And then like these amazing matches in ECW, doing like groundbreaking shit in New Japan. Like, and then onto WCW, and again, perhaps one of the greatest matches of all time in that fucking match that he had with Ray Ray. the big Halloween Havoc one with I think that was hair versus mask as well.
Yeah.
But, like, this dude, like, there's so many different parts of his career that you can just take a deep dive into. Even what you were saying before, like that little stint when he was on the outs with WWE for like a year after his like addiction shit, and he was sort of showing that he was back on the straight and narrow, I guess.
And just having blinders in Japan.
Yeah, like first couple of ROH shows where Eddie
Yes,
was
he was on the first show.
ever show, him against Super Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, unreal. And I mean, it's funny you mentioned the Art Bar. Was that his frog splash and the triple suplex move were Art Bar's moves. And so when Art Bar had like died, like he started using those moves as like a tribute for him. And just it's funny how like those are the moves that he's known for, but it was like somebody else's moves. Like, and he also, like, it's not as flashy as like RVD or whatever, but he always had my favorite frog splash because it was just direct, and it was like the Benoit headbutt where he would just go and it would hit the same spot every time, and it fully looked like his body was crashing into his opponent's body, and like all of his moves, like
just maximum impact.
Yeah, and to go back to these matches with Dean in or this one especially with Tiger Mask, and also Tiger Mask. I looked up Black Tiger. Sorry, I looked at the history of that and how it was like how they had like 7 different versions of him, and like he was supposed to be like a Yakuza like underworld character. And I was like, I love that so much. But then like I was like, I looked up a thing of the mask, like a picture of the mask, and like in the middle of the forehead, it's just got like the Eye of Horus. It's like an Egyptian reference, and I'm like, so man, they were just slapping any old thing on that mask. It's like, it's so good. It cracked me up so much. But
just like, this looks exotic.
Yeah, exactly. They were like, I don't know what to fucking put on this thing. Just like some guy, like the mask maker backstage, being like, like, well, you're not even Google imaging it back then. Like, just drawing inspiration. Probably down at the library making photocopies of all the different symbols. But it was just so funny. I was like, so Eye of Horus, does that mean anything? And I just like looked up like Black Tiger, Eye of Horus. And it was just like no similarity, no reason that it's on there at all. So good.
If I could find out if there's any significance to that, if any bloody listeners or anyone is like enough of a nerd to know the story on that, I'd need to find out that. But
that would be great.
The whole like thing of Black Tiger is like super interesting because that everyone, like, to me, when I like first really got into Eddie, I thought of like Black Tiger was like his alter ego, and it was like a key part of like his career that was this like cool other character he did in Japan. And then you look back, and I love Cage Match for this, because you can go down and look how many matches, how many years, all that kind of stuff. Like those Black Tiger years were probably a really small part of his career in the grand scheme of things.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
But he like made that, and I mean, especially like another thing that people might not know, like the first dude to play that Black Tiger character, like kind of the antithesis to Tiger Mask, was Rollerball Rocco. And I know how much you used to really fucking love that amazing World of Sport stuff, and Rollerball Rocco, like, to me, one of the absolute greatest of all time. Like, I've never seen Rollerball Rocco in anything but a fabulous match. So to be following a dude as great as Rocco in that character, like, Eddie fucking pulled it off and then some. So I think that's super interesting.
Yeah, I mean, those World of Sport ones, like, we could do a whole other podcast on just those matches, like finding the old bit matches on, like, that used to be on World of Sport in England, and they're just, like, on YouTube, and, like, the variants of those is again, and that's in the 60s or 70s even, where these guys are just having, like, some of the most, like, technical matches where they can just do crazy stuff, like the catch can style, like kind of comes from there. And like you go back and you watch that and you're just in awe because you're like, oh, I learned some chain wrestling off a guy at training, and then he told me to watch this match, and then I watched that match, and then you see these guys who had a match in the WWF that did this, and then that was really good, and then all of a sudden 30 years earlier there's these guys that are doing 10 times that for a whole match. Like, there's no body slams, there's no punches, there's no any, and it's just like, it's so entertaining and so fun. And like the crowds are different again. Like it's just like, it's like generational. There's eras. There's, yeah, it's so interesting.
Dude, it's so funny you bring that up because like thinking about that now, and we're talking about like this style of match, there's a lot of similarities between that to like a Rollerball Rocco and Marty Jones kind of like clinic that was like groundbreaking at the time. Dynamite Kid is another dude that really defined that kind of style. So, man, it's, I don't know, this kind of wrestling to me, like this, especially this Black Tiger versus Dean one, like I think it was my favorite match of the week just because I guess when you're used to so much of like the tropes of current wrestling, and stuff being so spotty and really like overly choreographed and like really like driven towards that kind of that like everyone chasing that like 5-star match kind of like bullshit. There's something about watching a match like this that's like fast paced and aggressive and like tight, like what you were saying, like the actual like submission work, like all the strikes are like real snug and hard hitting. There's like no real gaps of like a guy looking like a this is like a fake schmoz they're putting on. Like this is just, I don't know, you watch this with today's eyes, and as much as we were saying before, like you kind of forget how groundbreaking this was, but it kind of has like another appeal to it, like because it's so different to what we see today. Yeah,
and it's just so like, I don't know, I love it. It's just really like it's the people who came before you, and it's like the history of like, I guess the corny basketball reference, but like whenever LeBron talks about the reason he's so great and all that is that, it's because of the people before me. It's because of Oscar Robertson, because he challenged and sued the NBA in order to become a free agent, and he was able to play over here and go to this team and do whatever, and I was able to do what I'm doing, or I'm in the position I'm in, and now he's worth, I don't know, $1 billion or whatever, where it's because, there are all these people 50 years ago or 60 years ago who laid the path, and, it's a good metaphor because there's a lot of places that you can attribute that to, and wrestling is definitely one of them. And you go back and, carny shows in the 40s, 50s, how they've evolved into, things like the NWA, and now there's movies about it and all that stuff. And it's like, it's cool to see that people still remember and they still pay tribute to it.
Yeah, and I mean, these guys especially, like in Eddie and Dean, like, because both of these dudes are, second-generation wrestlers with, Dean and the great Malenko, and Eddie and, his massive, I think the Guerrero family is probably one of the all-time greatest wrestling families. So I think that's probably a part of it, like in sort of instilling just like a next level of passion and respect for what they do, I guess.
Yeah, I think, knowing where you've come from too, like there would be a lot of internal pressure to want to live up to that standard. And, clearly Eddie is someone who's done that. And to go back to what you were saying before, like how tight these matches are, and there's nothing I would say in today's context that really stands out as a move or as a,
there was one,
hard-hitting thing.
There was one for me in like just in terms of a crazy high spot, that bloody dive that Eddie did like to the outside, and everyone does a dive off the top to the outside now, so that's not necessarily that exciting, but the fact that he did it between that like tiny gate on the outside, like,
and he threw Dean Malenko into the gate to open it up as well. Like now, like that would never happen. It would be like some wrestler like pointing to the security guy who's keeping the crowd back to open it up for him, and him looking all confused, and then him jumping out of the ring and doing the spot. Whereas like he actually did a really hectic whiplash into the fence that broke it open, which caused him to be able to jump out into it. Like just little things like that's what the tightness, I guess, we're talking about, where it's like technically, like, there was a reason behind everything, and especially this is 1994, like UFC's just getting off the ground. People who watch wrestling don't watch boxing or, you know, karate or jiu-jitsu or whatever. Like, they just watch it, and they know it's scripted, but they don't like treat it like it's fake. Like, everybody buys into it, and, you know, a wrestling fan's best ability is to suspend their disbelief and get into something, and that's where you are going to enjoy the product the most, instead of looking through a cynical or a critical eye. It's just to actually just sit back and watch and see what happens, and don't allow things to take you out of the moment, and to actually watch the matches themselves. But that's what loved, like, all these, like, Dean, I think, did one. He did it in the ECW match, not this match, but where it was the shoulder and elbow hook into the headlock, and then he spun around and, like, kind of put him into a hammerlock.
Yep.
Got a headlock on the other side, span around again, and then did like a toe hook or like toe trip, and like into the cross-legged thing to bring him up to do that. And then there was a counter to that, and then that's what they just kind of went back. And it's like, you could do 5, 6, 7 minutes of like just really nice catch as catch can, old school style wrestling, and any fan will just be able to enjoy it, because it's like, it's not like anything else. Like, catch as catch can isn't a self-defense method, so it isn't used or an attack method, so it's not really used in the UFC and things like that. But like, there's still an art to it, and there's a thing that makes it real. And it was honestly my favorite part of wrestling, was being able to try and flow from the position you're in into another position and make it look natural, and to, you know, still engage the crowd, and to pick your moments to look out and use your psychology or, you know, whatever, to get people into it. And then, you know, I think they did a really good job in both matches of, well, obviously they probably did it a lot, but the chain wrestling into the arm drags, into the standoff, was just classic. And it's like, there's nothing special about it apart from how tight it all is. Yeah. And like, that's what separates it. And that's why they could do it. And you go and watch a match now, I guess, on any card anywhere, and there'll be one match of the 6 or 8 or whatever where 2 guys are just trying to go at it chain for chain style. And it just it's never that tight. Like, it's like selling every little movement and looking like you're always trying to get out of it and doing all those things and using, I don't know, like, the way they did it was always just the funnest to watch, man. Like, especially Eddie and Dean.
And it's like, I think part of it is like just an unreal level of chemistry too. Like, you can't forget that. Like, this is dudes that have obviously like they haven't wrestled that much at this point, but they've wrestled a decent amount. But just like one of those unbelievable kind of like once in a lifetime chemistries that sometimes dudes like have with one another, and you know, you can't like expect it. Sometimes the dudes that you know, think that are gonna have great chemistry don't. But like, to me, this was just like as good as it gets in terms of that chemistry and that like real, just like being able to quickly go from this to that. The amount that it was back and forth as well, I thought was like amazing, and that was really refreshing compared to, you know, what we were saying before about that kind of real formulaic nature of like, all right, opening spot, cut off, heat, combat, blah, blah. This like went back and forth, I think, about 20 times through the match.
And it's such a quick match in comparison to like, it's a 15-minute match. And, you know, that is a long match for a lot of things. You're not going to catch that on Monday Night Raw or a 15-minute classic. But like, from the perspective of, it's just something that you can have and do so tightly and so good, and everyone loves it. Like, and it doesn't matter where in the world it is because of the style. Like, it just speaks to everyone.
Yeah, and I think it's like respect, you know, like they're approaching this craft with like a high level of respect and approaching the fans with a level of respect for what they're doing. And you can't help but like have respect for what they're doing. And again, like you're talking about, suspend that disbelief. Like, they make it so easy to suspend disbelief because they're like showing so much respect for what they're doing. This isn't just like a, you know, loosely held together series of high spots to get some chants going. Like, I don't know. There's so much to love, man.
Yeah.
I'm really, really glad we got to talk about this one, man.
Oh, me too, man. I don't suppose we didn't even talk about it that much. We see each other every other month, I think, and we talk so much. We could still spend an hour just reminiscing over things that happened 10, 15 years ago. It's been a bloody pleasure, my friend. And please, if you find any good matches you want me to watch, I will 100% watch them.
Dude,
Or
absolutely.
maybe you can start a sub pod when you start getting followers, and we could do Monday Night Nitros again.
Oh man, I adored those days.
Oh, it was the best times.
But yeah, this is fun because, you know, knowing that you don't necessarily watch a lot of wrestling, it feels really nice to be like, hey, you know, I think you would really dig this, and watching this
Oh,
or
totally.
that. And again, there's so much stuff I reckon we could, go down a lot of weird wrestling rabbit holes of that kind of nature.
And I'll always have time to watch classic matches like this. I'm not going to go and dive into whatever's on TV, I think, anymore. But, you know, I will always go back and watch a classic because you just know so much from them. And I'm sure there's classics happening right now that I'm missing, but I think, you know, somebody's got to remember the old stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that I've had the privilege of having a friend like you who's been able to access so much of it, who's been kind enough to burn it to 100 stack of DVDs from Crazy Clarks and lend it to me and give me thousands of hours of wrestling to watch over the years. So thank you very much, my friend.
Dude, no, thank you so much. Honestly, my pleasure. You know, I think this whole thing, this podcast is just kind of about exchanging, you know, this weird kind of passion that we have about like this wrestling nerddom of whatever it is. So yeah, it's lovely to be able to share that with people and to be able to vibe over it. So thank you, my dude. You do have anything you'd like to plug on the way out here?
Hey, if anyone's around Camperdown Park down in Sydney this afternoon, you can come and watch my final game of the season of Ultimate Frisbee. For the local competition multi-sport, which sucks ass and I hate it, and I'm probably not going to play next season, but I do like all the quirky little sports I get to play, and I'm going to try and get several touchdowns to commemorate this beautiful pod.
Awesome. I look forward to hearing how it goes. Good luck, my friend.
Thanks very much, mate. Yeah, I'll message you a bit later on because I'll have to let you know the result, but I'll do a little debrief of the pod if you want. I just got to duck out now.
Easy. All right. Thanks so much, dude. I appreciate it. Good luck.
Great speaking to you, man. Thank you. Bye.
Cheers, dude. Bye. That was lovely. I dearly love my for a long time, and I think for the rest of my life, I think I'll consider this dude a best friend, brother from another mother. Josh, that was bloody lovely. We might have noticed again. I think Josh mentioned we probably didn't talk in depth about the match as much as we sometimes normally do, but I think that's good. I think it's good to kind of change it up a little bit and talk a bit more broad strokes kind of thing. We're not here being play-by-play commentators, but man, there's so much magical about this Dean Malenko versus Eddie Guerrero rivalry. I've heard some people call it overrated, and I couldn't disagree more. But just magical stuff, and I think we just sort of scratched the surface here. But I think this is a great one if you're going to do a little one-off, match to have a little bit of a taster of that, and especially an interesting one in taking place in New Japan as well. One thing that I didn't quite get a chance to bring up while speaking to Josh is the fact that at the end of the match, after the tremendous thing on from the gory special, which was the moment that I chose for the illustration, and then a great following series of roll-ups and counters that is just so tight and bloody good. And Dean finally catches him in the sweet power bomb, and then eventually taps him out to the iconic Texas Cloverleaf. But in the post-match Dean Malenko, I had not heard this before. This was new for me. This was a treat. Dean Malenko, some might know as the Iceman because he rarely shows emotion. He has the most amazingly upbeat, Van Halen-esque music that I have ever heard. That is just the greatest contrast to the Dean Malenko character. I cannot say enough good things about this music track that he has as his theme music here. I think I'm going to need to try to find out if I can find this amazing song. I don't know if I'll ever quite understand the reasoning as to how he ended up with it, but it is incredible. So if you watch the match, make sure you leave it on for the last little bit at the end there to catch this glorious song, and a great little post-match moment. But man, again, so much fun, great match. I could definitely do more matches of the week with any of the incredible Eddie versus Dean rivalry. Yeah, I hope this is a little love letter to how great Eddie Guerrero was, and Dean Malenko too, for that matter. But that brings us about to the end of the show. Big thank you, as always, to the great team at Social Suplex, socialsuplex.com. You can check out a gaggle of other wonderful wrestling podcasts if you dig this one. There's a All Things Elite one. There's a Keeping It Strong Style New Japan podcast run by the young boy himself, Josh Smith. And other Jeremy, different Jeremy to this show, but a whole bunch of other rad stuff, so check that out if you feel like more audio wrestling content. I will also point you over to my Instagram and my Twitter if you're into those such things, at Chris Things, where you can keep up with all of my wrestling art. So these matches of the week, my look backs, Way of the Blade, all sorts of things there. And I'll also let you know when the next podcast's out. So please check those things out. christhings.com.au is the place to go for to buy the things, to be able to support, to get prints of these matches of the week. I see a few people are purchasing those, and I greatly appreciate you. Thank you everybody for every bit of support that you give me here. We've got calendars, we've got all sorts of stuff on there, some original art. But I also do commissions. If you have a concept in mind that you'd like to, a favourite match or a favourite wrestler, whatever, we can bring it to life. Swing me a message, just say, hey Chris, what's the deal with the commissions? And we'll get that going for you. I have a lot of fun with those, and I'm very grateful of everyone that decides they want to pay me to bring their weird and wonderful ideas to life. So I think that's pretty well everything here. I'm looking forward to our next episode here of the podcast. Got something a little bit special, a little bit cool coming up. Don't want to tip my cap too much, but stay tuned for that. I think it's going to be a fun little interactive time, might we say. All right, well, I have had fun. I hope you have had fun. And let's keep on doing this thing. And I guess I need to tee up another Wrestling Art Curator episode as well, right? It's been a little while. Yeah. Okay, let's finish this off. Thanks, guys, and I will see you next week. Bye.
Do the hammer like you turkey necks. Yeah, do the hammer lock. I do the hammer lock. Everybody's doing it. Do the eye gouge. Yeah, do the eye gouge.
Say goodbye to your credit card rewards. Greedy corporate mega stores, led by Walmart and Target, are pushing for a law in Congress to take away your hard-earned cash back and travel points to line their pockets. The Durbin-Marshall credit card bill would enact harmful credit card routing mandates that would end credit card rewards as we know it. If you love your credit card rewards, tell your lawmakers, hands off my rewards. Tell them to oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill.